My brother called me heartless in front of 12 relatives at our mother's 82nd birthday dinner. You don't put your mother away because caring for her got inconvenient, Martin said, loud enough for the entire table to hear. Mom stared down at her cake. My aunt stopped chewing, and I sat there knowing that Martin had spent exactly 2 nights helping with Mom in the previous 6 months. I didn't argue with him that night. I didn't need to. 8 months later, Martin sent a message to our family group chat about his wife's mother. He wrote, "She needs professional care around the clock. Keeping her at home isn't safe anymore." I still had the message he had sent me after Mom's birthday, the one where he said almost the exact opposite. My name is Valerie. I was 58 when this happened, and for nearly 2 years I had been the person who handled most of Mom's day-to-day care. Mom's name is June. She had always been independent, almost stubbornly so. She lived in the same small house where Martin and I grew up, still folded grocery bags into perfect little squares, still kept a paper calendar beside the phone, and still insisted she could carry her own laundry even after her knees started making stairs difficult. The changes came slowly. First, I began driving her to appointments. Then I started organizing her medications because she occasionally took the evening pills twice. After that came groceries, laundry, help getting in and out of the shower, and more nights when she called because she felt unsteady walking from the bedroom to the bathroom. None of those things, by themselves, felt like a reason to change her living situation. Together, they began to mean she could no longer safely spend long stretches alone. I lived 20 minutes away and worked from home, so everyone quietly decided I was the logical person to handle it. Martin lived 45 minutes away. He loved Mom. I have never doubted that. He called her every Sunday and came for dinner when he could. But loving someone from 45 minutes away and being the person who hears the phone ring at 2:13 in the morning are two very different experiences. One winter night, Mom slipped beside her bed. She wasn't badly injured, but she could not get herself up. She pressed the emergency button she wore around her neck, and by the time I reached the house, 2 paramedics were helping her into a chair. I can still remember kneeling beside her and seeing how embarrassed she looked. The next morning she said, "Val, I think I'm becoming too much for you." I told her she was not too much, but I also knew love did not make me physically capable of being awake 24 hours a day. After that fall, we met with a care coordinator recommended by Mom's doctor. We talked about more help at home, adult day programs, and assisted living. Nobody ordered Mom to move anywhere. Nobody told me I had the right to decide for her. Mom was alert, involved, and very clear about what mattered to her. She wanted privacy, people around at night, help if she fell, and a place close enough that I could still visit often. I toured 2 assisted living communities with her. At the second one, Mom surprised me by asking about the card group and whether residents could keep their own coffee makers. On the drive home, she said, "I'm not saying yes yet, but I'm not saying no either." I made the mistake of telling Martin before Mom was ready to tell the rest of the family. His reaction was immediate. "You're seriously looking at homes?" "Mom is looking with me." That's not what I asked. I explained the fall. I explained the nights I was staying over. I explained that Mom herself wanted to understand her options. Martin said, "You always make everything sound reasonable." I remember asking him what that was supposed to mean. "It means you've already decided what you want." What I wanted, according to Martin, was my life back. 3 weeks later, at Mom's birthday dinner, one of our cousins asked how Mom was doing after her fall. Before I could answer, Martin leaned back in his chair and said, "Ask Valerie. She's already shopping for a place to put her." The table went quiet. I said, "Mom and I have been looking at options together." Martin shook his head. "She's 82. Of course she's going to agree with whatever makes your life easier." Mom looked up. "Martin, that isn't fair." But he kept going. "You don't put your mother away because caring for her got inconvenient." There it was, in front of my aunt, my cousins, Martin's wife Rebecca, and 4 grandchildren old enough to understand exactly what he was accusing me of. I wanted to list every night I had slept on Mom's sofa, every shower I had helped with, every meeting I had rescheduled, every time Martin had said, "I wish I could help, but this week is crazy." Instead, I said, if you believe Mom should stay home, then I need you to take 2 nights a week. Martin stared at me. I can't commit to that. Then one night, Valerie, I have a job. So do I. Rebecca looked down at her plate. Martin said we would discuss it later. We never did. That night, after I got home, he sent me a private message. I read it 3 times. You should be ashamed for even bringing assisted living up. Family takes care of family. You don't hand Mom over to strangers because it's hard. I took a screenshot. Not because I was planning revenge. Because after that dinner, I had started wondering whether I really was the selfish person he described, and I wanted to remember exactly what had been said. For the next 4 months, Mom stayed home. We increased daytime help as much as she was comfortable with, and I spent more nights at her house. Martin came twice to stay overnight. Both times he arrived after dinner and left before breakfast. Then Mom fell again. This time she fractured her wrist. While we were waiting for her discharge paperwork, Mom looked at me and said, I'm ready to go see that place again. Martin objected when she told him. Mom stopped him. This is my decision. 2 weeks later, she moved into an assisted living community 15 minutes from my house. She brought her blue recliner, her coffee maker, too many framed photographs, and the little ceramic dog Dad had bought her at a flea market 30 years earlier. The move was not magically easy. Mom cried the first night. I cried in my car after leaving. There were things she missed about her house, and there were things I felt guilty about even though she had chosen the move herself. But she was safer. Someone was there at night. She made friends with 2 women who played cards after lunch. She started going to exercise class twice a week. And for the first time in almost 2 years, I could go to sleep without putting my phone on the pillow beside my face. If you have ever been judged by a relative who had opinions about caregiving but never carried the actual load, subscribe to Real Stories of Women. Because what happened 8 months after Mom's birthday did not make me feel victorious. It made me realize how easy compassion becomes when the burden finally lands on your own doorstep. Rebecca called me on a Tuesday afternoon. Her mother, Dorothy, had been struggling after a serious fall. She could no longer manage safely alone, and Rebecca had been staying at her house most nights. I heard exhaustion in her voice immediately. I don't know how you did this for so long, she said. I told her the truth. I didn't do it very well by the end. Rebecca asked what I thought about assisted living. Before I could answer, she said, Martin thinks it's the safest option. I thought I had misheard her. That evening, the family group chat lit up. Martin wrote, Dorothy needs more support than we can safely give her at home. We're looking at places with staff available around the clock. This isn't abandonment. It's making sure she gets the care she needs. I stared at the screen. Then I opened the screenshot from 8 months earlier. You should be ashamed for even bringing assisted living up. Family takes care of family. Same brother. Same kind of decision. Different mother. I did not post the screenshot. A week later, Martin called and asked if I would help them tour facilities because I already knew what questions to ask. For a second, I wanted to say no. Instead, I asked, do you remember Mom's birthday dinner? Silence. Then he said, Val, this is different. How? Dorothy needs more help. So did Mom. That's not what I meant. Then tell me what you meant. He couldn't. The real confrontation happened the following Sunday when we all had lunch with Mom at her assisted living community. Martin and Rebecca had just toured a place for Dorothy, and Martin spent 10 minutes explaining why 24-hour staff, medication support, and a safer environment could be the responsible choice. Mom listened quietly. Then she looked at me. I think she knew what I was deciding before I did. I took out my phone. I said, Martin, I want to read you 2 messages. His face changed. I read the first one, the message he had sent after Mom's birthday. Then I read his new family message about Dorothy. Nobody interrupted me. When I finished, Rebecca covered her mouth with one hand. She looked at Martin and said, "You said that to Valerie." Martin's face went red. He said, "I was upset." Mom answered before I could. "No, you were comfortable." Martin looked at her. Mom said, "You were comfortable because Valerie was doing the hard part." That was the only sentence Mom needed. Martin didn't storm out. Nobody applauded. There was no dramatic speech. He just sat there. After lunch, he found me near the front entrance. "I owe you an apology." I told him yes, he did. He said he had honestly believed moving Mom meant giving up on her. With Dorothy, he finally understood that sometimes the person asking for more help is the person who has already given everything they safely can. Then he said, "I should have believed you before I needed to understand it personally." That was the apology I had needed. Not because it erased the birthday dinner. It didn't. But because he finally named what had hurt most. I had not needed Martin to agree with every decision I made. I needed him to believe that I loved our mother even when the safest choice was painful. Dorothy eventually moved into an assisted living community near Rebecca. I helped them compare places, but I did not do the work for them. Martin handled the calls. He attended the meetings. He learned how exhausting care decisions can be when every option comes with guilt. And something else changed. He started visiting Mom every Wednesday evening. Not calling. Visiting. Mom still teases him that it took 2 mothers to teach him one lesson. I don't tease him about it. Caregiving changed the way I think about family. The person doing the most work is often the person who gets judged most harshly, because everyone else sees the decision, but not the 1,000 small moments that forced the decision to exist. Sometimes keeping someone safe at home is the right choice. Sometimes more support is needed. Sometimes a move becomes the option the older person themselves wants. None of those decisions can be reduced to who loves someone more. What I know is this. It is easy to call someone heartless when you are not the one waking up at 2 in the morning. It is easy to say, family takes care of family, when another family member is doing nearly all of the taking care. And it is very easy to change your definition of love when the responsibility finally becomes yours. If your sibling publicly called you selfish for suggesting professional care for your parent, then later made the same choice for someone in their own household, would you show them the old message or let it go? Tell me in the comments, and subscribe to Real Stories of Women for more stories about the moments families reveal what they really believe.